Okay, so good evening, everyone who's joining us. Welcome to Cable No More Part 2, Services and Devices. This is a continuation of our Cable No More class that started last week on Tuesday. If you missed that session, you can view the recording by going to either the Orland Park Public Library's YouTube channel, where it's listed, or you can visit our website at orlandparklibrary.org, go to our calendar section and find the entry for last week's as well as this week's, and you'll see a link in that entry for a recording, as well as a link to all of the documents that are associated with this presentation. We'll have the recording of part 2 up probably sometime later this week as well. So anyway, that's just kind of an intro as to where you can find some things. I've already got confirmation that you guys can see and hear me okay. I'm assuming too that you can see the presentation. Is that correct? If you could type into the chat or the Q&A box, just let me know. I want to make sure everything's working properly. We had some issues last week, and this week I want to make sure that we got everything working. All right, so it looks like we're all set. Great. So welcome to part 2 of Cable No More, Services and Devices. Last week was a much more technical conversation about cutting your kind of bulky cable TV subscription and how to go to streaming services, what that can save you, how it saves you money, all of that. Again, if you were unable to come last week, please visit our website, go to the calendar section, look for the entry for last week, and you'll find a link to a recording of that presentation. So that one was much more technical about routers and modems and what kind of setups to look at, what kind of equipment you're renting. We will not be talking about that stuff as much tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about all the streaming services that are out there. There's even some new ones that we haven't really included much in the presentation previously that we can talk a little bit about, or if you have questions about. And then we're going to talk about the devices, terms like Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, that kind of stuff, Apple TV, and what those devices do and how they can help you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, my name is Ian Lashbrook. I am the Digital Services Manager at the Orland Park Public Library. That's my email address right there. If you think of a question later, or you have a question that maybe you're uncomfortable asking here, which is perfectly fine, or you have questions about maybe week 1's presentation, feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer questions, try to provide more feedback. And email is really good because if there are links to more information I'd like to give you, it's really good to provide that via email. Another thing to mention for those of you who weren't here right at the kind of before we started, there are about 6 documents associated with this presentation, including a price guide that I put together and our graphics department creates, as well as copies of this presentation. Again, if you go to our website, orlandparklibrary.org, and you go to the entry to the calendar section and go to the entry for either part 1 or part 2, you'll be able to view at the bottom of that entry all of the documents and click on them and pull them up on your computer to either print at home or read on your computer, whatever you prefer. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you have a question, so we used the chat a little bit already, which is great. I've had some people kind of let me know if things look good, sound good, we're headed in the right direction. If you have a question, please use the Q&A function. It will save all the questions for me. What we'll do is we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. I'll stay on as long as I can and try to answer your questions as thoroughly as possible. And I'll answer them in the order that they were submitted. This way, I've got a record of all the questions. Sometimes you may have a question at a part in the presentation, and that question may get answered later on in the presentation. So if I have a record of them, we can kind of work through them at the end. So if you think of something while I'm talking, go ahead, submit it in the Q&A, and we'll circle back to them at the end of the presentation, okay? So let's talk about the revolution that is streaming television. This is from an article from Consumer Reports that is now over 6 years old. Television is in the midst of a revolution. I don't think we can call it a revolution anymore. I think now we're almost talking about it as the norm. A lot of people have moved away from traditional cable services and are now using a combination of traditional services and streaming, or they're cutting their kind of bulky cable TV bills altogether and just going with streaming options, which is what we're going to focus on tonight. What are those actual options? Last week, we talked about how you actually cut and go to streaming. Tonight, we're going to talk about what do you want to stream? How do you stream what you want to stream? So tonight, we're going to cover how is streaming different from regular live television and maybe DVR functions, things like that. We're going to talk about streaming services, and there are a lot of them. One of the articles that you'll see with that list of articles I've already mentioned is a review from Consumer Reports. They have a correspondent who, I don't know if it's monthly or every couple months, updates a very, very thorough and comprehensive list of all the different streaming services, what they cost, and what they offer. And there are some very broad ones, and then there's some very niche ones as well. So you might want to look at that to get an idea of how much is out there. There really is quite a bit. And then we're going to talk about the devices themselves. Typically, when I do this program, I have examples of the devices with me, and you can come up and interact with them. Unfortunately, we're not able to do it in this format, but if you have questions about them or you're not really sure, please use that Q&A function, and we'll answer all those questions at the end of the presentation. So how is streaming different? We want to talk about the flexibility that comes with streaming. It's a very different setup than your live TV and maybe your DVR options if you have that. There's a lot more you can do now with streaming services and television, especially on mobile devices, tablets, laptops, all those things. We want to talk about downloading versus streaming. These are two very different things, and they can affect things like your data plan, for instance, for your cellular phone. And we'll talk about how that can affect things. And when do you need a Wi-Fi signal to watch what you're watching, and when don't you? We're also going to talk about on-demand versus live. There's a lot more live streaming services than there used to be now. There's a lot of live television. You have Hulu Live TV, you have YouTube TV, Sling Television. We'll talk a little bit about these. A lot of the streaming services originally started as on-demand services, and some of them still stay that way. Amazon Prime Video, Netflix is probably the big one that you're familiar with. So we want to talk about what does that mean? Because you're used to, in most cases, a live TV option. You turn it on, turn on your cable box, turn on your TV, and you have live television right there that's already going. That's very different from an on-demand setup. Streaming services, the big question that you have to walk away from this presentation considering is, what can I live without? And we're going to talk about more of that a little bit later. Netflix, Hulu, Sling TV, these are all kind of buzzwords that you've probably heard. See, these are some of the more popular ones, but there's smaller ones as well. Again, that comprehensive list from Consumer Reports that we've linked to on the calendar for on the website can really help figuring out those services. Premium versus standard memberships. Another document that you can download from us is that price guide, and that price guide was accurate as of June 1st. I go through and look at all the pricings available and whether or not they've changed. In a lot of cases, they haven't changed much. Netflix raised their prices last year, I think a little bit. It may have even been like a year and a half ago at this point. But there's typically a standard version and a premium version. So you want to consider those things and what the premium actually gets you. For instance, Hulu has a standard version that's relatively affordable at $6 a month, but it comes with ads, like regular commercials like you would see on television. Hulu, their premium version is about double the cost, but there's next to no ads. There's still a little bit, but not nearly as much. Is that something that you want to consider? Do you want to avoid ads? I'll tell you what, it's funny how a 30-minute program, a 30 block on live television is really whittled down to about 20 to 22 minutes when you take out the ads. You can watch a lot more TV when there's no ads. We want to talk about the pros and cons of streaming services. What's the good stuff? What's the bad stuff? What do you have to consider? Because these are big changes. And one thing I like to point out about these presentations, I don't think I said it last week, but I really want to, say it here, is that these presentations are just as much about kind of helping you make the decision to not make the switch as they are about helping you make the decision to make the switch. This may be overwhelming. It may be too much. Maybe you like the ease of use regarding your live TV with cable. Maybe you want to pay a little extra for that ease of use, that convenience. Making the switch can be complicated. I mean, that's why we have two classes, that run about an hour for each, class for each section. So I want you to know that if you walk away from these presentations and think to yourself, you know what, I think I'm okay with what I've got, that's fine. But in a lot of cases, we hope that you see the benefits because I do think that this is where we will end up. I think most media, as we're familiar with, will end up operating in some capacity through the internet. Then we're going to talk about streaming devices: Roku, Apple TV, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, all of those things. We'll talk about them. All right. So the first thing we mentioned is flexibility. Going with streaming options creates a really interesting opportunity for you to watch a lot of what you will watch via streaming services almost anywhere. You can watch on your laptop, your tablet, or your smartphone. But to truly watch anywhere, you need to make sure that you have a data plan that covers the amount of streaming you want to do when you're not connected to Wi-Fi. So this is almost like a bit of liability insurance for me, because what I don't want to do is have someone tell me they switched 6 months ago, come back and say all of a sudden my cell phone bill is triple the amount because I've been using so much data because I realized I could watch Netflix on my cell phone, not just my TV. Please be aware that these services, when you're streaming TV, live TV, on-demand TV, any of them, they take up a lot of data. And at home, on your home Wi-Fi connection, that's usually not a big deal. At places like the coffee shop, the library, if you're indoors at these places, they typically offer free Wi-Fi. You can watch, and if you connect to that Wi-Fi, it doesn't come out of your data plan. If your data plan is an unlimited data plan, it's usually not that big a deal. What you want to keep an eye on, if you decide to utilize some of the flexibility that these options provide, is if you have a capped data plan. If you have a data plan that's 16 gigabytes a month, be very careful. I am in an all streaming household. We do not have live TV except for using an antenna. That leads to, and my family is pretty tech savvy. We use the internet quite a bit. We average between 550 to 650 gigabytes a month of data. The reason I say that is that both of your major internet service providers in the Orland Park area, Comcast and AT&T, before the current pandemic, would offer caps on your monthly data. You couldn't go over 1 terabyte. That's hard to do unless you have a big family. If you have a bigger family or you have a lot of people connecting, it's easy to go over, and they'll charge you extra for that. Right now, a lot of those ISPs, internet service providers, are waiving those fees because a lot of people are using much more internet than they typically do. So just be aware of that. It's important to know that while these services provide a lot of flexibility, they can get you in trouble too if you don't pay attention, because they do. They all come with apps that you can download for your smartphone and your tablet, and watch them on your laptop, all that stuff. But that comes at a price, typically cellular data, if you're not connecting to Wi-Fi or if you don't have an unlimited plan. Okay. So let's talk about downloading versus streaming. Initially, almost all of these streaming services only offered streaming content, which means you had to have an active Wi-Fi connection. For me, I use Rokus for both televisions in my house, and they are both connected to my at-home Wi-Fi. We stream everything that we watch when we watch television, unless we are watching live TV via an antenna. Typically, the most popular brand people are familiar with is a Mohu antenna. And you can purchase those on Amazon or at a local electronics store. The last couple of years, actually it's been a little while now, some of these services have offered download features, which is really, really great. I have a young child, and my wife's family, some of them live in California, so we have to travel quite a ways. My family typically lives out, most of them live out on the East Coast, so we'd have to travel a ways, and we would be on an airplane with a young child. What we discovered was that there's actually a library service, Hoopla. If you're not familiar with it, please call the library and ask about it. Hoopla is kind of a media service that the library provides to you. That's music and books, ebooks, some movies and TV shows, things like that. And with Hoopla, you can stream it or you can download it to your device, which means that if you are on an airplane where you have no Wi-Fi or cell signal, you can still view it. Downloading means you have taken it out of the cloud or wherever it's hosted and brought it down to your device, and you don't need an active Wi-Fi signal or cell signal to access it. Streaming means you have to have an active connection. This was helpful to us because that meant that we didn't have to buy like the Wi-Fi on an airplane for a flight anymore. We could download things beforehand. Hoopla used to be the only one that offered this, which made it kind of really, really great for especially parents and people who travel. Netflix jumped on board a couple years ago, and now there's a lot of Netflix content, especially anything that's original and owned by Netflix, that is downloadable. And so you can download it before you get on a plane, or maybe if you're going to be driving through a really remote area and probably won't have cell service. They provide that option now. So please understand the difference. If you're at home, you're probably going to be streaming and want streaming devices or smart TVs, and we'll talk about those too, that are connected to your home Wi-Fi. When you're out and about, you're either going to want to have something downloaded, especially if you're traveling, or you're going to want to connect to the Wi-Fi elsewhere, or be aware that you're using your cellular data. It kind of goes hand in hand with that flexibility thing we were talking about. So let's talk about on-demand versus live. That live window that you see there is probably what you're more familiar with. It's what maybe your Comcast menu looks like, and it looks a little bit different. I just kind of plucked one off of the internet. Live TV means there's a bunch of stuff going on right now, and you can tune into any of it, but you're going to come in probably in the middle. On demand means you pick what you want to watch, and once you've selected it, you start at the beginning. So things like Netflix is entirely on demand. You don't go into Netflix and select something that's already playing. You pick what you want to watch and you start at the beginning. Know the difference between these because some of these services offer live TV options. Sling, Hulu, YouTube, these are live television options. Other services like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video are strictly on demand, and you're just selecting the things that you want to watch. It's just a different experience, and I want you to be aware of it. A lot of people choose kind of a mixture of the two services. Maybe they have one kind of live TV package for things like sports and stuff like that, and then have something like Netflix for some of the shows and stuff that they've grown accustomed to, or just for movies, or maybe Friday night to watch something, okay? All right, let's keep going. So the streaming services, oh man, there's a lot out there, but you have to ask yourself one really, really important question. What can I live without? The time to prepare for getting rid of cable TV and going with streaming is about 3 months before your contract is up with your current provider, because you're going to want to make changes, and you don't want to make changes in contract because you'll have to pay fees. That 3 months, you have to spend a month of that really paying attention to how you interact with your television and what you actually watch. It's amazing how many channels you get with a cable subscription, and it's amazing how few of them you actually watch. You can easily, in most cases, recreate the types of things you want to watch with streaming services at a much smaller cost. But you have to know what those things are, or you're not going to know which services to purchase. So the biggest question about when it comes to signing up for streaming services is asking yourself what you can live without. What don't you need to view or see? What channels do you never watch? You know, get a channel guide for your cable TV plan and just start putting X's through channels that you never ever watched. Pay attention to which ones you watch a lot. Pay attention to which ones you watch occasionally, because chances are you can recreate or get really close to recreating your preferred TV experience or entertainment experience at a much smaller price. You just have to know what to pick. And to do that, you got to pay attention to your habits. And when it comes to picking, there's a lot out there. There are several that are not in this picture right here. For instance, we've got HBO Max now instead of HBO Now. Hulu and YouTube both have live TV options. Hulu has also kind of a smaller, much more affordable option. Sling Television was one of the first live TV streaming. PlayStation, which most people associate with video games, has a live TV option that's kind of scalable. They let you select different plans that have different options and different channels. Most of the premium channels that you're used to purchasing through your cable provider, you can buy on their own now. And I would suggest that. A lot of times, like for instance, I think you can buy Netflix through Comcast now. Don't do that. Purchase Netflix on its own because you don't want Comcast handling your contract with Netflix. You want to be in charge of it and you should take care of it. I know that that means maybe a little bit more kind of watchfulness on your part, but it'll be helpful for you in the long run. Because you'll have control over all the accounts. And a lot of these services, like we talked about last week when we talk about, getting rid of TV and going with just internet. The great thing about this is that with your internet service providers, who also typically provide your television, they sign you up for year-long, 2-year-long contracts. This is so that you get a discounted rate. With these services, just about everything is month to month, which means you can try one for a month. And if you don't like it, you can cancel it. It's easy. Everything can be done online. You can deactivate your account. It's very simple and you're not locked into anything. Okay, so there's a lot of options out there. Again, the documents that we have on the website with the entries for these presentations on our calendar provide you with in-depth analysis of each of these services. We can't go into it here because I think at this point there's like 30 or 35 of them. This is only a handful. These are some of the more popular ones. So you want to look at that document and then look at our price guide, which will give you an idea of what everything costs. So you may already have a streaming service and not even know it. How many of you have Amazon Prime? Most people bought Amazon Prime because of the free shipping, right? Don't pay for shipping anymore. A lot of times it's 2 days or less, sometimes a little bit more. But when you pay for Amazon Prime, and most times you pay for it kind of in a yearly subscription, included with that is a subscription to Amazon Prime Video. Prime Video is a great way to check out if streaming is for you. If you already have Amazon Prime, and if you have a TV that you purchased within the last couple years, you probably also have a smart TV because you can't really get a TV without the smart features anymore. You can download the Prime Video app for your television, sign into your Amazon account, and try Prime Video. A lot of people, they used to not realize that it came included with Amazon Prime. Now, a lot of people, I think, are familiar with that. But a lot of people just buy Amazon Prime for the shipping, the free shipping. You get this service as well. And Prime Video has Emmy award-winning shows on it. It has lots of movies on it. There's a lot of stuff there. Take a look at it. Try it out. You may already have access to this and have the ability to try it out in your home. This is a great way at no cost, no additional costs, nothing up front. If you have a smart TV and you have an Amazon account, you can do this. Or I'm sorry, if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you can do this today and try it out and just see if you even like the experience, if you like the idea of completely on demand and not live, for instance. So give it a try if you already have these services. Maybe you were unaware that this is already part of what you're paying for if you have Amazon Prime. You get a lot of popular shows and movies through these streaming services. Game of Thrones, for instance, the first couple seasons is available on Amazon Prime. It's really neat. Amazon, if you don't have a subscription to HBO, Amazon is the only place where you can get some HBO original content. They have a deal with HBO to provide the first couple of seasons or all the seasons of older shows on their platform. It's also the same with Amazon Prime with PBS shows like Masterpiece Theater, like Downton Abbey. All of Downton Abbey, I believe, I don't know about the later seasons, but I think most of Downton Abbey is available. All of The Sopranos is available, and a couple of seasons of Game of Thrones. So it's not the newest stuff, but again, you may be able to experience some of these things you've heard about but haven't been paying for or knew where to find. Netflix, on the other hand, is a huge, huge creator of original content. Stranger Things, you may have heard about, is a big show on Netflix. Roma was the first streaming platform feature film to be nominated for an Academy for Best Picture. So These services offer some unique experiences that you may already be able to access. Netflix, you would have to get a Netflix account if you don't already. And again, check those pricings, look at that, look at the information, see if it's something you want to try. And even if you don't like it, you only have to pay for a month. You can always cancel and not have to pay the next month. So what are the positives regarding a streaming service? It can save you money, and contracts are month to month. It's $12 to $15 a month for an on-demand service like Amazon Prime Video or Netflix. And for a live TV service, you're looking at $25 to $50 a month. Sling TV, for instance, offers 2 different packages, Sling Blue and Sling Orange. Each is $25. You can get them both together for, sometimes you can catch them on special for $40 or $45, but typically they're $50. YouTube TV, I think, is $50 or $60 a month. Hulu Plus Live, I think it's called. They all change their names here and there. Is $45, I think, a month for live, and that's live TV, traditional live TV that you're used to, but offered through a streaming platform and month to month, no contract. Different services have different libraries and channel lineups. Again, this is where some of that documentation that you may have seen, that you see on our website associated with the programs can really be helpful. You want to see what's offered. You want to find out what's available. With the on-demand ones, the stuff that's available changes constantly. There's a small empire of emails you can sign up for telling you, well, what's leaving Netflix this month that you've got to watch before it goes, and what's coming next month that's going to be new. And again, positive, you can watch anywhere, TV, iPad, tablet, laptops, smartphone. All of these are options. But again, we talked about this already. Please, please be aware of the kind of limitations of your cellular data plan if you take advantage of any of these options. What are some of the negatives? There's more passwords to remember, and I cannot help you there. I'm sorry. Each of these accounts is going to have a password. You need to remember it. Write it down somewhere, keep it close by. This is really, you've got to remember these. You want to make sure it's secure because a lot of these accounts will be tied to your bank account or your credit card or something like that. So you want to keep them safe and secure. The credentials, we call them, your username and password. Usually your username is just your email address and then a password. The newest releases aren't free. Must be seen live or recorded if it's a TV show, purchased or rented if it's a movie. This is one thing that can be difficult with Amazon Prime Video. If you're going to try out Prime Video, look for kind of a ribbon in the top left corner of the screen that says Prime. Anything that has that little ribbon on the corner is free and included. Anything you don't see with that ribbon, there might be a charge for. So just be aware of that, Amazon sells and rents you shows that are newer and movies that are newer as well, but they have a huge library of original content and movies that are available for free as part of your Prime subscription. You must also have a good internet connection, at least 50 megabits per second. And I'm talking about one, relatively new television that's streaming something. You'll see a lot of services tell you can have less than that. The stability can get really weird and not great. And a lot of people now are used to watching things in HD. If you want to stream something in high definition, which I'm pretty sure you do, because it's jarring to go back to standard definition, make sure you have enough internet speed. Make sure you've purchased a plan that will support what you want to watch. And we'll talk about TV resolutions in a little bit and how your speed kind of needs to scale with the resolution that you're hoping to achieve and that you want to watch. Your network channels. Some of your favorite networks offer some content for free. PBS, for instance, will let you watch the newest episode of some of their Masterpiece Theater programming. But if you don't watch that newest episode, you've got to pay for the episode because it goes away. Not all the content is free. You can watch clips and trailers and certain episodes of things. HBO Now, HBO Go, HBO Max, there's 3 different services now. Showtime, for instance, they all come with your cable subscription, but you can buy them on their own and sign up for them, and they cost $14.99 a month, which gives you an access to all of their original content, plus the library of films that they're offering at that time. So like HBO has original content, but then it also has a whole bunch of movies that they're offering as well. So let's talk about the streaming devices. Smart TVs. All right. I have to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of smart TVs. That being said, it's hard to find a TV that doesn't have this stuff baked into it at this point. I find smart TVs to be a little clunky, a little slow. They have more errors and more issues. I find that the streaming devices made by Roku, Amazon, Apple, and Google tend to work much better than the smart TV functionality on your smart TV. And I think that there's a reason for that. I think that TV companies started out making TVs and then kind of pivoted towards this internet connectivity thing. These companies like Roku and Google and Apple and Amazon, they started online. They understand online services and how they should be delivered, and they've maximized that. And in some cases, like Amazon, they've maximized that technology and then figured out how to bring it to you at an affordable price. Some of their hardware that you can purchase is very affordable. And like on things like Prime Day and during the holiday shopping seasons in November and December, you can get a lot of these devices for much cheaper. I'm not a big fan of smart TVs. That being said, we've already talked about if you have a smart TV, and chances are if you've bought one within the last 5 to 10 years, it's probably a smart TV. If you have a smart TV, you can try this out. So if you have a smart TV at home and you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you can try Amazon Prime Video tonight. If your TV is older, chances are you're going to need a streaming device. If it doesn't have smart capabilities, all it needs then is an HDMI input. And this is pretty standard on TVs for the last kind of, I guess, almost 15 years maybe. HDMI is pretty standard at this point. So if the TV doesn't have smart features, doesn't connect to the internet, but it has HDMI, then you can purchase a device that will connect it to the internet and work. That being said, I've had smart TVs that I still didn't use the smart TV functionality and bought a device for because I didn't like the software that the TV had. It just didn't work real well, or it was clunky, like I said, or I got error messages. The devices themselves that we'll talk about in a minute tend to work better because they were designed to work with the internet. So know your resolutions. This is what we were just talking about. There's 720p, 1080p, and 4K. 720p now is pretty much obsolete in terms of purchasing a television. You're not going to purchase a 720p TV, and 1080p is really not very popular anymore. You'll see them again around the holidays. You might see a really cheap TV on Amazon or something, and it's 1080p. 4K is kind of the new standard, but each of these resolutions represents a better picture quality and clarity. What you need to worry about is that, or what you need to think about is that whatever resolution your TV is, there's two things. There's one, does the streaming service you're signing up for support that resolution? You may have to pay more. For instance, Netflix does support 4K streaming, but you have to pay a couple dollars more a month to have access to it. And do you have enough internet to support streaming at the resolution you'd like to? So for 720p, that's the lower end of streaming services. And we talked about 50 megabits per second is going to be plenty fine for 720p. 1080 is the mid-range. And you're going to want probably around 100 megabits per second to get a nice, clean, consistent, clear picture. 4K is the high end, and that's where you're getting into your 150, 200. My household, we have a 250 megabits per second streaming service, but we do a lot of work outside television as well, watching TV. Like we have computers, we have smart devices, we have some smart home technology. All that stuff is running on our internet connection. We want to make sure there's enough internet to go around. Be aware of this. If you have a newer 4K TV, you want to take advantage of that resolution. If you purchase a streaming package that only supports 1080p, then that's the highest resolution you'll get on that 4K television. You have to buy or you have to sign up for a service, the version of that service that supports the resolution you're interested in watching in. Now, it's not that it won't play. So if you pay for 4K plan from Netflix and you have two TVs in your house, one's 720p and one's 4K, it'll scale itself to the highest possible on each device, but it's not going to go over that, okay? All right. So as we kind of mentioned, streaming devices can be used to make a TV smart. An older TV that maybe just has that HDMI connection, it doesn't have the built-in smart TV functionality. Any of these devices can be used to make that TV smart. I think the most ubiquitous at this point is probably the Fire TV, and that's because people tend to buy them around the holidays or on Prime Day when they offer them. I mean, Amazon cuts the price on these devices by like 50%. On major days when they sell them. So you can get a Fire Stick for, you know, $20. Apple TV is if you're an Apple person. I'm actually quite a bit an Apple person. I have a MacBook, I have an Apple Watch, I have an iPhone, I have an iPad. I am not the biggest fan of Apple TV. It's really built for Apple users who have spent a lot of money and time investing in iTunes and buying things digitally from Apple. It does some cool things. Its connectivity to your phone can be really fun and interesting for showing pictures and things like that. But nowadays, a lot of other smart devices do that as well. Chromecast is Google's product, and it really hasn't changed much in the years that it's been out. I mean, it's been out for 5 or 6 years now. It hasn't changed much. The big thing, and you'll notice from these pictures, the big difference is already pointed out right there in front of you. I don't know if anybody's noticed what the difference is, but the difference is the Chromecast does not come with a remote. Your phone is used as the remote. So your phone kind of beams its signal to the Chromecast, and that connection is what streams the item for you. Some people like this because it's one less remote. Some people don't like it because they want that remote. They want that tactile functionality. Roku is my favorite. It just is. I've been using it for a long time. I have a Roku 3 that's 7 years old at this point and still works great. I recently got a Roku soundbar, which is kind of a Roku streaming device and a soundbar for your television mixed into one, and it's been a fantastic product. These are not, I'm not being objective in any way. This is very subjective. I like these products because I've used them. I had a Chromecast, I've used Apple TV, and I've used an Amazon Fire Stick. I've owned all of these devices in some way in order to best educate myself, in order to present something like this. I just enjoy Roku. One of the documents, we keep talking about that list of documents. Usually if we were doing this class live in a room where everyone was, you would be able to pick up all the documents and we could refer to them. But one of the lists is a list of reviews from Consumer Reports about all of the devices. And Roku's typically are kind of near the top of the list. They're good, they're easy to use. They have some really neat functionality, some of them. Now, be aware that there's a difference between a Roku TV and a Roku streaming device. A Roku TV is basically a smart TV with the Roku software already in it. These are not as powerful as the Roku devices. I have a Roku TV and I have Roku devices. I prefer the interface in the devices. The devices tend to operate faster, they work better, and the quality's been a little bit better. But the Roku TV, the kind of smart TV software, is still better than a lot of the smart TV softwares I've seen out there. So these are your kind of big ones in terms of streaming devices. And you can use any of these to make an old TV that doesn't have smart TV capabilities smart. Now, one question always comes up is, do you need a device for each TV? Yes, you do. Each TV that you plan on streaming to needs its own individual device, okay? Now, the plans that you purchase, the streaming services, will allow multiple streams at a time. So like Amazon Prime Video, for instance, is like 2 simultaneous streams. So you have 2 people watching 2 Amazon Prime Video programs at the same time on separate TVs. Hulu Live TV offers the same thing. It's like 2 live TV feeds at the same time. So you need an individual device for each TV, but a lot of times your streaming service offers multiple streams at the same time. You just have to kind of be aware of that before you sign up for them. Again, be an educated consumer. It's why you're watching a program like this, and make sure that you're paying attention to what your service offers. And those documents that we've provided for you on our website will give you really in-depth explanations of all of that. There's also a ton of apps that are available for the streaming devices in particular, and for your smart TVs too. You can use these if you want. The only one that I've ever found that I use, well, actually there's two that I find I use a lot. I will stream music from Spotify on my television because, like I said, I bought a sound bar, so it sounds really good. And so, you know, if I'm in the kitchen making dinner or something like that, or it's just Saturday during the day and my family and I are hanging out, we might play music on the sound bar that's connected to the TV. If you watch YouTube, now you may not watch YouTube, but I guarantee you family members of yours watch a lot of YouTube. YouTube is where most people are consuming their content. Now they call it content these days. YouTube is another way to stream, watch, whatever you want to call it, programming, but it's not your typical programming. YouTube is could be created by your next door neighbor. You don't know. There's people making all kinds of YouTube videos. It's billions of hours of content available, and a lot of it are things like, I mean, especially like I have a young child, toy reviews, video games, all these things that people can create on their own in their own homes. And it's become its own cottage industry where certain YouTubers are making a lot of money creating videos because there's ad revenue associated with that video creation. Those two are really the only two I use, but there are other ones that you can use, obviously there. I don't know why you'd want to check Facebook or Twitter on your TV, but you can if you want. All right, so what about sports? This is always a big question that I get. And it's not the easiest answer. In the Chicagoland area, man, you've got a lot of sports teams. Now, for me, it's not such a big deal. I'm from just south of Philadelphia. I am not a local sports fan. I root for Philadelphia sports teams. Sorry ahead of time. I have ways in which I watch the teams that I want to watch through the internet and other services. But for local sports, a lot of times you can get access to most of the major sports that you'd like to watch, and that's through NBC Sports Chicago. This channel comes with most live TV packages, so Sling, YouTube TV, Hulu Live, all those. This comes with it, and a lot of the sports that you want to watch will be here. You can also, I think I've mentioned it a couple times, you can purchase a digital antenna that you can plug into your TV, and that will get you like, you know, Fox on Sunday to watch the Bears game. So sports are available, but you know, they don't have everything, and it's hard to figure out sometimes which games are going to be carried and which aren't. You have to be pretty diligent to stay on top of it. I just want to kind of give that, you know, that caveat up front. This is one area where streaming services can be a little gray because it changes constantly. Sports is a huge industry, and their contracts and how they're allowed to operate and broadcast have all kinds of rules and regulations, and they change a lot. So be aware that you may give up some sports. You may not. Maybe the things you want to watch are all going to be shown. It's hard to really pin it down and know for sure. Like I said, Hulu Live, YouTube TV, Sling TV. Fubo TV is another one that offers a lot of live sports, probably the most, but it's a streaming service almost dedicated to sports that costs as much as other live TV services. So it's almost like you need two. If you want live TV from YouTube and then Fubo will offer you all the sports you're missing, well, then you're back up to the same price that you had before. So, you know, again, this comes down to that, what do you really watch? Pay attention to what you watch. Because it'll help you decide if this is right for you, or again, if it's not right for you and you want to stick to your more traditional television setup. So in the end, what does it all look like? You need an ISP, an internet service provider, and you need hardware, which we all covered last week. If you missed last week, go to the calendar section of our website, orlandparklibrary.org, and look at the entry for last week's program, and you'll find a link to watch the recording of the video, or you can go to our YouTube channel, look up the Orland Park Library on YouTube, and you'll find a recording of the program. That's going to cover ISPs and hardware. So you need an internet service provider. In Orland Park, it's probably going to be AT&T or Comcast, and you need hardware. All right. Next, you need streaming services. or get an antenna. I have both. So let's see, I have regular Hulu, I have Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and I have an antenna. And that covers most of what I need. We've signed up for Disney Plus, which I don't really cover here. You probably heard a lot about Disney Plus. Disney Plus is probably really great for some people. For us, it's good. I mean, we have a young child, but he's not the most keen on Disney stuff. So, you know, I'm not sure. You really have to look at that list of services and decide, you know, what's working, what works for you, what do you watch, what does your family watch, things like that. And then finally, if you don't have a smart TV, but you have a TV with an HDMI input, you can get a streaming device, or you can try it out with a smart TV to start. But again, I, in most cases, end up using a streaming device, even with smart TVs, because I find that streaming devices tend to just be a better experience than the streaming software built into your televisions. You can do this. It sounds really complicated, and it is. There's a lot you have to do between negotiating with your ISP, you know, paying attention and researching the channels and services you want to sign up for, and also, you know, really studying yourself and your TV viewing habits. But if you do all of that and you take your time and you start it a couple months before your contract is up, you can make the switch and it can be successful. And I'm pretty sure in most cases you can eliminate a pretty decent percentage of your bill while maintaining the channels and the programs that you most likely want to watch. At the library, we can help. We have a lot of items that you can place on hold and check out. We have Rokus. Our Rokus don't allow you to access streaming services. What they allow you to access are all the new movies that we purchase for our patrons. When we purchase movies, we buy, especially when we buy Blu-rays, we get download codes, and we use those codes on the Rokus that we check out so that the whole library that the Rokus have access to gets updated constantly. And we have hundreds, at this point, maybe even thousands of movies on those Rokus. And the great thing is you can have one checked out, and if we update a code that day, it'll show on your list at home. It doesn't have to come back to the library to be updated. We also have a bunch of other services you see there. We have hotspots. We have VHS to DVD converters. We have classic gaming consoles, Nintendo and Super Nintendo. And we have smart speakers from Google and Amazon if you ever want to check out kind of smart home technology. All of these things are available for checkout from the library. Again, my name is Ian Lashbrook. I'm the Digital Services Manager. That's my email address. I don't see any questions in the Q&A window now, but if you have some, please go ahead. I'll hang out here and try to answer them as best as I can. But thank you. If you don't have any questions, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the program. Please watch part 1 and check out all the documentation on our website that we've provided regarding these classes. But thank you very much, and I hope you have a good evening. So one question is, why do no streaming services have WGN? WGN is a local channel, so I'm not sure. I thought some did, but so some of the streaming services do offer locals, but they're usually the major locals like CBS, ABC, NBC, and Fox. So WGN is maybe regional and hasn't struck up a deal with anyone yet. I'm not sure. That's a great question. I would have to research that myself. I'm sorry. You're right that I don't usually see it in channel lineups, and it might be because it is a local, like hyper-local channel to this region. That's yes, another reason to get an antenna. Yes, that's a great reason to get an antenna. Yeah, WGN, and then some of your local broadcasts of sports. It's weird, like I said, some of the sports fall under weird laws and things, so they may get blacked out even though you're in the right region. They may be blacked out through streaming services, but if you have an antenna, you'll still be able to get access to them. But yes, that is a perfect example of why an antenna can kind of help you round out the channels you might be missing. Thank you for pointing that out. Any other questions? Oh, someone wrote that it's been helpful. Good. I hope it has been. I know that this can seem like a lot of information, and it is. But hopefully, I've helped provide a bit of a roadmap for how to do this. And you know, if not, or if you get lost or you're confused, please reach out to me via email, and we'll try to get any questions straightened out. The links, yes. The links to all the documents. Okay, so if you go to our website, orlandparklibrary.org, and head to the calendar of events, look for both either this entry for tonight's event or last week's. And if you click on it, there'll be a whole bunch of information about the class. And towards the bottom of the entry, there are like 6 links to all the different documents. And they're in both. You'll be able to see both. And in that, in both entries also is a link to view part 1 if you missed it last week. Any other questions? Well, you're welcome. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot out of it. Again, I know it's a lot of information, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. And if you missed part 1, please, head back and check out the recording. Okay, if there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation. Thank you for attending, and have a good evening.